This is how I found out that to my family, I was basically a non-entity. The day before my stepbrother's 18th birthday, the birthday I'd saved up for a ridiculously expensive watch for, I simply wasn't on the guest list. My name is Sarah. I'm 26, and I work as a consultant at a downtown jewelry store. It's not just a job, it's my personal fortress and, at the same time, hard labor. Every day I look at the glitter of gold and diamonds while saving up for things I can barely afford myself. Or rather, I was saving up. I was saving for Kevin, my stepbrother. Kevin is the son of my stepfather, Mark, and my mother, Linda. We're not related by blood, but I always tried to be a real older sister to him. Since childhood, when Mark came into our lives, I took on the role of the responsible one. Mom and Mark were busy with themselves, their relationship, their problems, and Kevin, who was 8 years younger than me, was often left to his own devices. I helped him with his homework, drove him to sports, came up with birthday gifts that my scholarship, and later my small salary, barely allowed. I was his protector at school and his personal ATM as he got older. It wasn't stressful, it was natural. I liked feeling needed. I saw how Mark, my stepfather, barely participated in his son's life, except to give orders or lecture him. Mom was always on Mark's side, no matter what happened. They lived in their world, and Kevin and I lived in ours. The last 6 months have been a sprint for me. Kevin was turning 18, and I decided it had to be a grand gift, not just something from the electronics department. He was constantly talking about watches. Not just any watch, but the designer men's watch he saw in a catalog when he was waiting for me at the store. The price was astronomical for my budget. About $3,500. I didn't tell anyone. This was my secret and my mission. I worked double shifts, took overtime on weekends, and ate sandwiches at work instead of a proper lunch. It wasn't easy, but I imagined his face when he saw that box. He deserved it. He deserved the attention his parents weren't giving him. I saved literally every extra penny. It was tough because Mark, and sometimes Kevin, constantly asked me for temporary loans that rarely got paid back. Mark urgently needed money for car repairs, Mom for a new dress for an important meeting. I gave it because I couldn't say no. It's family, after all. A month ago, with just 4 weeks until the big day, I finally bought it. The watch. It was in a safety deposit box because I was afraid to keep such an expensive item at home. I looked at it only once when I picked it up from the store, and the feeling was worth all those months of work, a feeling of triumph and immense love. The family was planning a party. A big one, in a rented hall. Mark decided not to skimp, probably to make up for years of disinterest. They were discussing the menu, the guests, the music. I helped Mom pick the venue, coordinate the guest lists. Or so I thought. I called decorators, contacted catering services because Mom constantly forgot or was busy. I even contributed small amounts from my savings for minor expenses so I wouldn't bother Mark, who was stressed about the budget. And then, yesterday, exactly 1 day before the 18th birthday, I stopped by their place to pick up the confirmed guest list. I needed to check the number of favors for the seating arrangement. Mom greeted me with a strange, nervous smile. "Oh, Sarah, you're just in time. Mark and I just finished the final touches. You know how he likes everything to be perfect. We even hired a professional organizer to take the burden off you, dear," she said, taking my hand. It was false, but I let it go. "Mom, could you give me the final list? I need to check how many place cards to order for the tables." "I told you I took care of that," I said with a slight irritation because it was already late. She hesitated, looking away. "You see, there's a slight adjustment. Mark decided it would be a very intimate evening. Only Kevin's closest friends and, well, Mark's key business partners. A very important event, Sarah. You understand." A chill ran down my spine. I did not understand. Absolutely not. "What do you mean by intimate, Mom? I'm on the list, right? I helped organize all this." She looked at me like I was a pesky fly. And her next words were branded into my memory like a bullet. Words that made the last 6 months of my life meaningless. Sarah, dear. You're not on the list. Mark decided you'd be bored with his guests, and well, he thinks you've done enough already. Get some rest. It's a family celebration, but in his definition. Family. My brain locked onto that word. Me, who had slaved for this family for years, who currently had $3,500 for his brother locked in a vault, who was hardly an afterthought to anyone else, I was not on the list. But Mark's business partners were. I felt a wave of such cold, biting resentment wash over me that it became hard to breathe. This wasn't just offense. This was betrayal. I saw that to them, I wasn't a family member. I was a tool. Cheap labor to be used and then tossed out when I wasn't needed at an important reception. Now I stood on their doorstep, with that awful, expensive box on my mind, realizing I wouldn't even have a place card at the table. Maybe I really am a non-entity, but this non-entity has a hell of an expensive gift. The drive back to my apartment after that conversation with Mom was a blur of traffic lights and the sick, churning feeling in my stomach. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. It wasn't just that I was uninvited, it was the casual, almost bored way Mom delivered the news, as if telling me I was out of milk. Mark thinks you've done enough. That phrase kept repeating in my head, a nasty little mosquito buzzing in the silence. It wasn't praise, it was a dismissal. A politely worded, upper-class way of saying, we've squeezed all the labor out of the help, now send her home. When I got inside, I didn't turn on the lights. I just sank onto the sofa in the dark. 6 months. 6 months of working grueling hours, sacrificing every bit of my social life, skipping appointments, and eating cheap takeout just to afford that absurdly expensive watch. I kept seeing the watch box in my mind, dark, heavy, and holding the weight of my misguided devotion. It represented more than money, it represented the effort I put into being a good sister and a good daughter, the one they could rely on. The one they could use. I tried to rationalize it, to find some shred of decency in their decision. Mark's business partners. Okay. Maybe it was a strictly professional event disguised as a birthday party. But why involve me in the planning for weeks, letting me call venues and caterers, only to cut me out at the last minute? And why was Kevin silent about it? He knew how excited I was. He knew I'd been working extra hours. My stomach dropped further when I realized I hadn't even heard from him yesterday. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over his contact. Should I call him? Demand an explanation? But what would I say? Hey, your parents just told me I'm not good enough for your birthday party, even though I bought you a gift that costs more than my rent? The thought felt cheap and desperate. I didn't want him to pity me or feel guilty. I wanted to be genuinely missed. I scrolled through the family group chat. Mark had just posted a picture of the event hall, fully decorated. It looked stunning. Ready for the big day, the caption read. Mom had responded with 3 heart emojis. No one had mentioned me. It was like I had already vanished from the narrative. That's when the bitterness really started to set in, replacing the initial shock. This wasn't just about an invitation, it was about value. My value to them was precisely 0 when no task needed performing. I felt a sudden need to check on the watch. Not because I thought it was gone, but because it was the last tangible thing connecting me to this massive emotional expenditure. I drove to the bank and, standing in the cold, sterile vault, the clerk slid the tray toward me. I opened the small, heavy box. The watch gleamed under the fluorescent lights, stainless steel, elegant, undeniably luxurious. It was perfect. It was the perfect symbol of my foolishness. As I held it, a different thought started to surface, an ugly, creeping idea. I could just keep it. Sell it. Use the money for a down payment on a better car, or finally take that trip I always wanted. Why give this expensive symbol of my loyalty to people who clearly didn't respect it? But then, there was Kevin. He didn't make the guest list. He didn't tell Mom to uninvite me. He was still my little brother, and I genuinely cared for him. Did he deserve to be punished for his parents' snobbery? I locked the box and put it back in the safe deposit box. The dilemma was agonizing. If I gave it to him, I was endorsing their behavior, accepting my role as the disposable, generous sister. I'd be giving up $3,500 and my self-respect. If I kept it, I was punishing Kevin and confirming that the bond one thought we shared was weaker than my own hurt. The worst part? I still needed to see him, to talk to him, to know if he even noticed I was gone. The party was tomorrow night. I had to decide. The watch felt like a ticking time bomb, forcing me to confront the reality of my relationship with my family, a one-sided ledger where only I was making deposits. My emotions were a tight knot of anger, sadness, and the desperate, lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong about them. Maybe there was a simple explanation that didn't involve me being a nobody. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. The day of Kevin's birthday party arrived, and the air in my apartment felt thick and oppressive, like a storm waiting to break. I hadn't slept well. My mind was a battlefield between the $3,500 I had spent and the absolute zero value my family placed on me. I called out sick from work, something I almost never do. I couldn't stand the thought of selling expensive jewelry to happy customers while my own life felt so cheap. Around noon, I was pacing in my living room when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. Not a call, a text. And not an apology or an explanation. Mark, 12:05 p.m. Sarah, can you please swing by the house this afternoon? We realized we forgot the seating chart printouts at home, and the organizer needs them ASAP for the hall setup. We're running late. Key is under the usual fake rock. Thanks. My blood ran cold. This wasn't an olive branch. This was another errand. They had literally barred me from the party, yet they still expected me to act as their unpaid assistant, their silent courier. My heart pounded with a mix of fury and a twisted sense of validation. They didn't see me as a person with feelings, I was just a reliable tool for damage control. I wanted to text back something scathing, something that mirrored the gut punch I felt yesterday. But a much more dangerous idea began to form. A cold, calculating calmness settled over me, a feeling I hadn't known before. I realized this was my chance. My chance to not just stand up for myself, but to redefine my relationship with them entirely. I drove to their large, suburban house. It felt surreal, the home where I had spent years caring for Kevin, now standing as a monument to my dismissal. I found the spare key, let myself in, and located the seating chart printouts on the dining room table. They were neatly clipped, a diagram of who sat where. As I scanned the names, the resentment curdled into outright anger. There, clearly marked at the head table next to Mark and Mom, was Mr. Robert Jensen, CEO of Jensen Holdings, and Mrs. Laura Klein, board member, financial sector. My name, of course, was nowhere. The list confirmed everything Mom had stammered yesterday. The party wasn't for Kevin, it was a business networking event thinly disguised as a milestone birthday. Kevin was the prop, Mark's ego and business aspirations were the center stage. Suddenly, my eyes landed on a small, discreet jewelry box sitting on a shelf near the fireplace. It was the color and shape of a typical luxury box, similar to the one holding Kevin's watch in the bank vault. Curiosity, driven by a need for certainty, overwhelmed me. I opened it. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a different watch. A women's diamond-set timepiece, undeniably expensive, far more ornate than anything Mom usually wore. Attached was a small, embossed card. I unfolded it, my hands shaking slightly. It was a note, clearly written in Mark's handwriting. To my dearest Linda, a little thank you for all your support and hard work in making this the most successful business event of the year. You deserve every one of these diamonds. Love, Mark. P.S. Make sure you wear it tomorrow night. A new, sharp pain hit me, cutting through the confusion. He bought Mom a new, expensive watch to celebrate this successful business event, while I was the one doing the grunt work and shelling out my life savings for his son. The slap in the face couldn't have been more literal. My 6 months of sacrifice were invisible. My mom was being rewarded for simply playing the hostess and supporting Mark's agenda. I put the printouts in my bag, my mind racing. I was supposed to drop these off at the venue by 4 p.m. The party started at 7 p.m. I looked around the silent, opulent house. The contrast between this wealth and my own tired apartment, bought with the money I should have been saving for myself, was unbearable. That's when I made the decision. The original moral dilemma, give the watch or keep it, had just been rendered moot. This wasn't about Kevin anymore. This was about the principle of being used, discarded, and then used again. The betrayal was too deep, the disrespect too overt. I had to make a statement, and that statement had to be as sharp and expensive as the gifts they valued. I had the seating chart. I had the knowledge of their priorities. And I still had the $3,500 watch waiting in a sterile bank vault that would never see the inside of their house. I had everything I needed for an act of pure, distilled retribution. I walked out, locking the door behind me. I didn't drive straight to the venue. I drove to the bank. My hands were steady now. The anger had become focus. The sweetest revenge isn't an angry outburst, it's a perfectly executed plan. When I walked out of the bank with the heavy watch box securely zipped into my handbag, the late afternoon sun felt cold on my face. The rage had cooled into something crystalline and focused. This was no longer just about Mark and Linda's betrayal, it was about the moral accounting of my own life. I had the seating charts and Mark's little reward note to Mom, and I had the expensive and used timepiece. The pieces of the puzzle weren't just fitting, they were snapping together to form a very ugly picture of my family dynamic. I drove the long way to the convention center, the venue for the family celebration. I had the printouts that Mark needed, but I didn't drop them off right away. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot across the street and just sat there, watching the hustle around the entrance. A steady stream of expensive cars, sleek business suits, and tailored dresses. No sign of casual friends or extended family, just Mark's target audience. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Kevin's contact. I needed to know if he was complicit, or just a kid caught in his father's scheme. I sent him a simple text, "Hey. Just wanted to see if you're doing okay with all the party stress. It looks intense." His reply came quickly, and it wasn't what I expected. "Kevin, for 4:45 p.m. I'm fine, Sarah. Honestly, it's mostly just Dad's clients. Kinda boring. I wish you were here. The real party is going to be later with my friends, away from all this. Are you coming to that?" His message was a relief, and a sharp new twist. He did miss me. He wasn't happy with the event. And most importantly, he wasn't involved in uninviting me. He genuinely seemed to think I was just busy or uninterested in the formal part. The dilemma shifted instantly. It was no longer about punishing Kevin, it was about protecting him from his parents' emotional manipulation and simultaneously exacting my retribution on them. I texted him back, "I'm really sorry, Kev. I have a huge deadline at work tonight. But I'll make it up to you later this week. Happy birthday." I lied effortlessly. The lie felt necessary. He would get his real gift later, a different kind of gift, the truth. Now the ultimate moral question presented itself, a sharp edge cutting through my focus. If I kept the watch, I'd be $3,500 richer and emotionally satisfied. But I would have the knowledge that I let Mark and Linda get away with using me, without ever knowing the full cost of their disrespect. If I went through with my revenge plan, the financial cost would be zero. I would still keep the watch, but the emotional, irreparable damage to the family dynamic would be immense. I could shatter the illusion of their perfect evening and expose them for the calculating users they were. I looked at the venue again, at the expensive facade they had constructed. The choice was clear. The money was just money, my dignity was priceless. I finally drove to the drop-off point, a small back office where the event organizer, a stressed woman named Monica, was coordinating staff. I handed her the seating charts and gave her a laminated card I'd prepared while sitting in the parking lot. "Hi, Monica. I'm Sarah, Mark and Linda's assistant for the evening. They asked me to bring this. It's the final list of VIP guests and their special seating instructions. Mark said to make sure this information is visible to the entire service staff before dinner service." I handed her the laminated card. Monica, too frantic to look closely, just nodded, thanking me profusely for saving the day. I turned to leave, but stopped by the service entrance. Just behind a curtain, I saw the catering staff organizing plates. I knew what I was doing was irreversible, a nuclear option. I looked down at the key in my hand, the key to the safety deposit box that still held the watch I had nearly bankrupted myself for. The gift I hadn't given. I knew my actions would make me the villain in Mark and Linda's story, but I also knew, with absolute certainty, that they had already written me out of their hero narrative long ago. I took a deep breath. I had dropped off the seating chart. But the laminated card I gave Monica wasn't a list of VIP guests. It was a single, devastating note, meant for the entire service staff to see and, crucially, to hear about. My plan was set. The climax was moments away, and the grand reveal would not be my presence, but my complete and final absence. I drove home slowly, leaving the glittering convention center and my oblivious family behind. The laminated card I had handed to Monica, the organizer, was small, but its potential impact felt enormous. I had printed a simple, yet devastating, message, intended to be seen by every server, bartender, and catering assistant before they walked into that lavish room. The message read, "Reminder to all staff, tonight's event is a private business function. Please be aware that the host's daughter, Sarah, 26, jewelry consultant, was uninvited due to budget constraints, despite providing significant, unpaid organizational support for weeks. Mark and Linda value professional networking over family ties. Do not discuss the uninvited guest in front of Mr. Jensen or Mrs. Klein." It was ugly, petty, and brutally honest. It was designed not just to humiliate Mark and Linda, but to create a silent, pervasive shift in the atmosphere. Their important business event was now staffed by people who knew the hosts were cheap, self-serving users who threw their own family under the bus to save a few dollars, or, more accurately, to protect their social image. It wouldn't disrupt the dinner, but it would kill the prestige they were trying so desperately to project. Every raised glass, every polite smile from the service staff would now be laced with judgment. I got back to my silent apartment around 6:30 p.m. The party was starting at 7 p.m. I settled on the sofa, clutching the heavy watch box. The clock on my wall ticked with agonizing slowness. I didn't want a fight, I wanted them to realize their mistake without me having to scream about it. I wanted the consequences of their actions to find them. At 8:15 p.m., the silence broke. My phone started vibrating with an intensity one hadn't felt before. First, Mark. 2 missed calls. Then a text, "Sarah. Where are you? The organizer can't find the seating charts. Did you get them? Call me now." He hadn't even realized my note was the issue yet, he was focused on the logistics I usually handled. Next, a frantic call from Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice, when I finally listened, was high-pitched and laced with panic. "Sarah, you have to call us. Something terrible is happening. The staff, they're acting strange. They keep making these awkward comments. Mark is furious. What did you do with the seating charts?" Finally, the text I had been waiting for. Mark, 8:35 p.m. I saw the card. "You spiteful little, you cost me the deal with Jensen, you hear me? He heard about it from the bartender. You've ruined everything. Don't ever contact us again. You are done." The message was a torrent of pure, unadulterated rage. And in that moment, I felt a wave of relief so intense it was almost dizzying. I had won. Not the money, not the fight, but my freedom. Mark wasn't angry because I hurt his feelings, he was angry because I hurt his wallet and his reputation. It was the confirmation I needed that his value system was entirely transactional. I sat there, looking at the expensive watch box. It was a beautiful, powerful piece of machinery. I had bought it for love, and now I held it as a symbol of my separation. Kevin was the only person who mattered. I had told him I'd make it up to him. I drove back to the bank that night and retrieved the watch. The next day, I drove to Kevin's university dorm, far away from Mark and Linda. I didn't call first. I just knocked. He opened the door, looking tired but genuinely happy to see me. We didn't talk about the party. We talked about his classes, his friends. Before I left, I handed him the heavy, small box. "Happy birthday, Kevin. You deserved this. Not the party." "This," I said. He opened it, his eyes widening. He looked at the watch, then at me. "Sarah. How did you afford this?" "I worked," I said simply. "A lot. It's for you, because you're my brother. And you're worth more than a business deal." He hugged me, tightly. "I heard a little about the party. Mom and Dad are losing it. I'm sorry they were awful to you." "I know," I replied, stepping back. I didn't tell him about the card or the full extent of the betrayal, or the watch Mom got. That was my truth to hold, not his burden. As I drove away, I looked down at my own wrist, bare of any expensive jewelry. I had nothing to show for the past 6 months but the absence of $3,500 and the certainty of being utterly alone in the world, free from their toxic demands. The family tie was severed, violently and cleanly, not by the absence of an invitation, but by my refusal to be their invisible servant any longer. The sweetest revenge wasn't the disruption of the party, it was the realization that the peace I felt now, sitting alone in my car, was worth every single penny I had lost. I saved Kevin, I saved my dignity, and I let them destroy themselves. The ending wasn't a fairy tale, it was just a quiet, painful acceptance of what family truly means, and what it definitely does not.